Yes. Hi, Gina. Welcome. Are you new in the members area?
Yes, and I was going to say maybe, actually, it's the first week. Maybe you could talk a little bit about AI and how it's influenced you and helped you.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah. So let's see, just yeah. So AI, wonderful. Let me just. AI is very powerful, and so for me, how AI came as kind of like the missing link in in all the material that we have. Well, that's not true. Adishanti somewhat talks about the after awakening story, but there's not much out there. There's a lot of invitation into, okay, let's transcend, and it's great. It's beautiful. And it is the first stage sometimes for whoever is really suffered enough and ready. But it won't be necessarily for everyone, this transcendence just part. So the material that's out there, a lot of it is based on, like, let's find who we are. And which is beautiful, which is fundamental, of course. And that's why I'm so motivated to actually offer these meditations to remind ourselves that who we are is unwounded, who we are is limitless, who we are is unmoved and unborn. But at the same time, what I found, what was missing out there, and I found it in Scott's work and Adishanti somewhat. He talks a little bit more vaguely about it, the meditative self-inquiry. He talks about it, yes. But what I found was that even though we wake up to see our true nature, and even though we abide in our true nature, and what that means is like all of a sudden the lights are on, and meaning you cannot escape here and now. It just doesn't work. The mind, just that mechanism of the mind trying to recreate itself through an image of itself in the past or future, just collapses. And what it looks like, it doesn't look like, we read in books, like, yes, of course, there was a period and there was a moment of beautiful spiritual honeymoon, but at the end, we end up with the most ordinary experience of life, how we experience that as kids. Spontaneous, here and now, and we're like really kind of trusting as kids. Maybe we trusted parents or we trusted whatever was the environment. Unfortunately, it created a lot of chaos that we're still deprogramming, but there's this innocence of trust. And there is this knowing that, not just knowing, but experiential, constant abiding in the unmoved, in the observer, which is almost like if before shining the light was on one thing, like a flashlight in a dark room, you would look, oh, okay, look at this. And then you go with the mind into that. Oh, look at this, maybe it's this. And then you go into it. But then it's like the lights are on and you can see everything that is happening. So you see all the mechanisms that are in play, like the ego mechanisms and the sabotaging mechanisms. And that's why it was for Scott was easy to invent these tools, because they naturally start happening after we wake up. Mm-hmm. It's just naturally, it's like the observer starts seeing everything, all the mechanisms. And okay, so it's like naturally within me, it was also happening, but I hadn't had the time or the skills like Scott had the time and the skills to actually work with people. Because in my case, what was preventing me to explore that or even share that with people is my intense childhood trauma that was in the way somatically in my whole system, choking me from being able to even share the non-dual experience with people. It was fascinating. Like every time, like there was still this needing to hide. There's still this need to be perfect before I can make a video. It was just like driving me crazy. And all I could do, I have a lot of writing. Maybe one day they make into a book, but I was just writing and writing my whole realization because I couldn't share it with everyone. Tim, does that mean that we need to wake up first to practice? No, no, not at all. I'm going to get to this. No, not at all. Yeah, so so this kind of somatic memory stuff was so in the way, but not just in the way. It was just the more we become aware, and everyone is here is aware. Believe me, we wouldn't be coming to KI if we wouldn't have a certain level of awareness already in place. So this awareness, the more light we are, like the light within, the more darkness or the more shadow comes to light. It just has to, it has to free itself. It's just, there's no other way. And so what was starting to happen, it's just I started to question, like, what would be the tool that could be helpful? Because I was already starting to offer meditations and kind of push myself out there through my own kind of realization, and certain inquiry already was in place. But it was interesting to find Scott. So Scott's work, I knew him before years ago, but it was basically I fall on the book, which called Unfindable Inquiries. And then back then it was the Living Inquiries. And it was so fascinating and so powerful that just by reading the book and start doing my own work, I excavated, some of the conditions that were still running the show behind the scene, unseen, because it's unconscious. The stuff that is unconscious, even awareness doesn't see them until they are brought with certain question inquiry into consciousness. So this was quite fascinating to find that there is these limiting beliefs that were still in place that were unconsciously believed to be true until awareness or consciousness could kind of see like, I'm still believing to be this limited.
Once you saw them, what happened?
Yeah. So once I was reading his book, and it was about, I was like actually trying to do a video, and I was like literally crying because of like, I hated them. I hated to hear my voice, and I hated everything about it. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to sit with it. And what I found, it was like, wow, I thought it was the not good enough me. And so I started to explore that, but I went even deeper. And then I saw, okay, it's not just not good enough. I have to believe I'm not good enough so I can be perfect. And I have to be perfect so I can be lovable by my mom. I'm like, oh, wow, that's what was preventing me all these years to be able to just make mistakes or just do the video, however it is, right? So it's like immobilized me for so long until it was kind of seen in awareness. And when we really see things from the right place, the thing is that we are not necessarily want to continue perpetuating and feeding that belief, So it's like next time it arises, you just don't give it energy. And it's going to arise, right? Because there's the habitual pattern, and it's going to die out if we don't give it the attention and the energy and feed it, like fuel it, basically, with awareness. Awareness is what makes all these beliefs and concepts come alive, because it's like a light that shines through, and let's say a concept arises, and we, like as a light of life, we merge with that, and then it feels so real. But if we start realizing that we're just the light, and we not necessarily have to entertain this anymore, it won't have the energy, and eventually it's just not going to show up. And so AI came, and it's really, really helped to eliminate a lot of somatic memory that still was playing and was still sabotaging my experience. There was a state of lack that I had to address. There was existential and intergenerational trauma of constantly needing to escape suffering and moving from one place to another, to another. So this was addressed, like I'm patiently staying and living in one place now. And then there's like so much abundance coming in, and it's like, it just opens up and clears up the ability to be in the world in an effortless way. That's what it does, really. So it's quite fascinating in this way, that it's and And I would like to answer, of course, Tim's question, do we need to wake up before we do KI? Not at all. The beauty is with KI that we can address both. We can, what it does, it reminds us and it plunges us, if we pay the attention and the facilitator is right, or we do it from the right place, we start remembering who and what we are in the process. Because if we're not an image that is arising, if we're not a word that is arising, if we're not a sensation, we can start noticing then what is it that is aware of it all? Where is, like, what is this that is seeing, and experiencing everything? So in the process, when things kind of dismantle and images, and we rest, as Scott always loves to say, rest from awareness, rest with these words, rest with these sensations. So when we start kind of resting and resting, we start noticing, oh, we are this restful space in which everything arises, from the most intense sensations to the most blissful sensations. But we are not one or the other. We're just actually the fundamental ground of being or existence that is allowing all of this to come and go. Yeah. So in KI, I know people that came to KI and got super quiet inside. Not necessarily they were, not abiding in awareness before. They were not necessarily, yes, they were seeking some rest for sure. And in that processing and eliminating the noise inside, because the noise inside is the justification and the grasping onto the belief of separation as a story of me. So the story of me unconsciously could be I'm not valuable, or I'm invisible, or I'm something. And this is going to create so many situations that going to attract to ourselves, or the same kind of relationships over and over and over. And it's just going to create so much more noise identifying with this unconscious story, that's going to be what's taking us away from actually being more calm. And as I'm saying, it's very ordinary state. It's very familiar state. It's not out there. It's not something our minds imagine. And it doesn't mean that there is no access to bliss, or there is no access to, contentment that is always here. But what our minds imagine is some sort of an altered entranced state or a merged state with everything. It's not like that. It's what it truly is. It's like a calm being here and now, and just dealing with the next obvious step, the next obvious thing, the next obvious thing that comes. And people get quiet with KI. The minds get quiet with KI, and of course our curiosity should be there. It depends what we want. So some people come to KI just to release stress and kind of get some point of openness to be in a relationship, or whatever the outcome that they're looking for. But if they're looking for an abiding state in presence, that's also available. Like what Scott and Dan are proposing in the new model of recovery from suffering is eradicating all beliefs, because it's not just the limiting beliefs that could be addressed with KI, but any kind of beliefs. And when all kind of beliefs dissolve, and we no longer stand upon grasping upon something, then the freedom, which could be scary to the mind, because there's nothing really to grasp onto. There's nothing really to stand upon. And it's just this complete trust, and which trust can be also addressed with KI, and it could be the mistrust could be dismantled with KI. And when we enter full trust, then we stand, absolutely, we stand. It's just like, there's just absolute nakedness in the unknown. And the trust in that whatever, there's no need of projection, there's no need of creation of oneself. But at the same time, with this kind of emptiness of ourselves, just emptying and emptying and emptying all beliefs, with this emptiness that we are, there's so much beauty. I've never received so much from life like I'm receiving right now, ever. And it's not because I'm looking for it. It's because I'm not limiting myself to project myself as a vision of myself that I should be like this or I should be like that. And when that is not there, then it's like, wow, I'm actually noticing all these many things that I thought that were not here, not for my lifetime, not in this lifetime. They're all here, abundantly. So, yeah. So yes, it's definitely a huge cleanse. And if anything, like kind of like it's like waking up. When waking up, it's like naturally starts happening. Like all the stuff like just starts rising and boom, like bubbles, like all beliefs just starts popping like bubbles. And I was saying like, wow, at that time, many years ago, right, when it happened to me, at that time, ayahuasca and other medicinal stuff was happening. I'm like, oh, it's like interesting how like life needs to push us to sit in that fire of truth, to really not to escape. And from that's where we start seeing, we start seeing our concepts, we start seeing our beliefs, we start seeing all the hiding places. So a lot of people, had this tremendous experience with changing their life completely, through medicinal, whatever, integration. But at the same time, we can create it for ourselves. We can sit down and meditate, and that's going to start happening. We can sit down and do KI, and that's still sitting in fire of truth. It's like, it's really these portals, again, that I'm saying that could be very free, meaning like KI, we can learn the tools. Okay, maybe we pay for the training or we get facilitated, but at the end, we can learn the tools. They're very simple and we can do them on our own. So it's like everything that is truly liberating and truly beneficial, it's actually very, very free. Yeah. So yeah, it's an invitation, and it is to be kind of a little bit more radical. I don't want to scare anyone, but if you really want true freedom, it's like we really have to, how would I say, it's like a death rehearsal. We need to like psychologically kind of die, meaning this idea of ourselves just has to relax. Because this idea of ourselves, it's what stands between you, life, and you, life. It's just this wall that is believed to be true. And then when things relax in that way, whatever the means are, whether you meditated long enough, whether you did KI long enough, whether it's a combination of both, the curiosity, the perseverance, and the commitment has to be there. Yeah. So what KI did for me, wow, it's just brought me into complete integration and embodiment of that freedom in the human, most ordinary human ways. Yeah. It's the embracing of the full spectrum of being human, from the most shameful parts of ourselves to the most blissful parts of ourselves. And at the same time, it's also knowing that we're none of this. Yeah. But we can be so intimate with all of that because we no longer push away the shameful part or the guilty part, and we no longer grasp onto the blissful part. So things are just flowing like kids. Things are flowing through. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Let's see. Okay.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Your experience, and that I feel really grateful that I understood it. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's like I really understood it, which tells me something.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, people don't come to KI. There's already such a great readiness for sure. The resonance and the fact that we we know we suffered enough. We tried enough things, and we want the real deal.